Essentially, fascism is a revolutionary form of nationalism. It emerges in a crisis of the nation or the race where enough people feel that something radical has to happen, otherwise the nation will collapse or the race will die. So it's a revolution which involves changing not just the social structures and the political structures, but also the way people feel a new sense of identity as part of a reborn nation. So the core myth of fascism is the myth of the national rebirth. And where do I get this from? From reading fascists. This is how fascists themselves, in all the different countries, I could give you a long list, if you actually read or read in translation what they said about what they were doing, this is what they thought they were doing. So that is my definition, a revolutionary form of nationalism. The potential for belonging to a movement like fascism is in all of us if our lives break down. Because what fascism offers is a very powerful sense of purpose. In a deep crisis in a modern society, a lot of people lose that sense of meaningfulness of life. I mean, if you think of the epidemic of self-destructive behaviors, gambling, drugs, sex addiction, suicides, depression, eating disorders, you could see this anthropologically as symptoms of a society which is not fulfilling the basic function of a culture, which is to give people a sense of belonging, of meaning, of identity. Now, fascism is a radical solution to the problems of not knowing who you are, where you belong. I would say, for example, that radical Islam, political Islam, Islamism, jihadism, are performing the same function for Muslims who feel lost in the modern world. So if you look at the origins of fascism, it comes into being in the interwar period, which is full of chaos and an obsession with the end of civilization, and it provides all these needs. So the precondition for fascism to arise is a sense of deep dissatisfaction with the present order. So fascism really has an existential dimension, which most historians have tended to ignore because they see it from outside as something evil. But if you're inside it, it's something good. So in a way you could say that the seeds of fascism or extremism or fanaticism are always there, but a bit like seeds in a desert which need a rainfall, and the rainfall is the crisis. The crisis is necessary to make these seeds of fascism spring out of nowhere. The other factor is that you can't have fascism in a country which has not secularized. In other words, if the culture is still dominated by Christianity or Buddhism or whatever, there is no space for a secular nationalist movement of rebirth, because all the energy, all the cultural energy goes into the maintaining of the religion. So fascism could only come into Europe and be born in Europe because there had been over 100 years of the breakdown of the church, the breakdown of Christianity, secularization, the First World War, that created an orgy of nationalism, the First World War. And it is in the context of the nationalization of the masses that fascism comes into being. Most academics have studied fascism from outside on the premise that it is something evil and irrational and it has no meaning and it has no ideology and it's a sort of epidemic of madness. But my entry into fascist studies was to say, well, what do fascists think fascism is? And this allowed me to notice a pattern in their thinking that I have already mentioned, the idea of rebirth of the nation into something glorious and healthy. Now that technique, if you want to give it a name, I call it methodological empathy. Now, if I try to empathize with a fascist in order to love them or to join them, that's a negative empathy. But if you want to understand fascism, but by trying to imagine what their problems are and what the crises they want to solve, then you enter into their universe And there are parallels with the way, for example, certain forms of depression or mental illness are dealt with. So I suppose my originality originally was that I read as many fascists as possible. Generally speaking, where there's a crisis of identity, people tend to move to the right. And so I would really say that what is rising is social, existential, economic insecurity, and that is the precondition for right-wing politics. But once again, each country is different. For example, Switzerland has no economic problems, but it still has a very strong populist movement, but it's not a fascist movement. So I basically, I find headlines about the rise of the right or the spread of fascism very misleading, especially when it's somehow associated with interwar period. This modern crisis is utterly different from the 20s and 30s. People who make direct comparisons between what's going on in modern Europe and the interwar period know nothing about history. I would identify two major threats still posed by fascism. One is terroristic fascism. The attack in New Zealand recently was of jihadist inspiration. There is a great danger that terrorist Nazism will become more common, one. Two, there is a very insidious, subtle danger posed by what's called technically the new right. Now, the main danger that fascism has acquired in an age of populism is that they can enter into national politics by coming in via populism. Radical uses of the language of difference and identity and keeping your culture whole, which can move into mainstream politics. And at that point, non-fascist parties start bringing out policies which are a concession to the far right. And I think that is a sort of contamination, eine Verseuchung, which really is the main danger posed by fascism. But again, this is very different from saying there is an it on the rise. It means that whenever you find real fascism, you have to say, where is it in society? What influence is it having? And is it affecting, for example, school textbooks or immigration policy or human rights? You know, that is the main danger as I see it, but not a fascist revolution. How a nation reacts to a populist movement which has a fascist fringe is very, very important. In Holland, for example, Geert Wilders created a powerful populist movement, but all the other parties agreed not to form a coalition with them. So they created what I call a firewall between populism with the extreme right wing of Nazism and the rest of the political system. So they are basically marginalized. So what I would ask all anti-fascists to do is to first of all ask themselves, is it really fascism I'm against, or am I basically against intolerance, illiberalism, hatred, xenophobia, the exclusion of human rights? And unfortunately, fascism does not have a monopoly of that. So first of all, you have to say, what am I really against here, and what am I for? And then look at the groupings of your own country in terms of the right, break down the right, and then have specialist advice about how you deal with each right. You need a broad coalition of anti-right-wing forces with lots of specialist expertise to have specially targeted activism. So basically, the effective way of dealing with the right is to not give in to the language of hatred and demonization, but to try to use methodological empathy to understand what right you're dealing with, and then to use a mixture of knowledge and activism to deal with each individual right. And then there is infinite hope.